It was a cold November morning when Emma Miller's life fell apart. The news came like a bolt of lightning, destroying everything in its path. John, her beloved husband, had been declared dead in a terrible car accident. In that instant, Emma felt the ground open beneath her feet, sucking her into an abyss of pain and despair she never imagined possible. In the days and weeks that followed, Emma tried to hold on to what was left of her life. She had 3 small children who needed her. Lucas, a 10-year-old boy who, despite his young age, tried to be strong like his father. Sophie, 7, whose cheerful laughter had turned into a dark silence. And little Tommy, only 5, who still didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. Each morning, Emma put on a smile for them, but inside she was broken. At first, Emma cried alone, hiding in the bathroom so her children wouldn't see her tears. She remembered the happy moments with John, the walks in the park, the summer nights they laughed together late into the night, the dreams they shared for the future. Now, everything seemed like a distant memory, as if it belonged to another life. The nights were the worst. She would lie in the empty bed, hugging his pillow, trying to find some comfort in the memory of his scent, but she only found a cold and relentless void. Emma tried to cling to anything that could give meaning to her existence. She left her job to take care of the children, but the loss of her career only increased her sense of uselessness. Her friends, unable to cope with the magnitude of her pain, began to drift away, leaving her even more isolated. The loneliness was crushing, and she felt as if she were disappearing, little by little, under the weight of her grief. Emma's world became even darker when Lucas started having problems at school. He was confused and angry, and Emma didn't know how to help him. Sophie, on the other hand, became a shadow of herself, avoiding friends and closing herself off in her own world of sadness. And Tommy, so small and innocent, didn't understand why Mommy was always so sad. Each of these small tragedies was like a blow to Emma's heart, and she felt increasingly powerless to fix things. Emma had to be strong. She had to be the rock for her children, but the truth was she was drowning. Each day was a struggle to get out of bed, to face the world, to pretend that everything was fine. She wanted to scream, to cry, to have someone tell her that everything would be okay. But no one could do that. She was alone in her pain, and the only thing she could do was keep going, one step at a time, trying to find a way out of that labyrinth of suffering. Every time Emma looked at her children, her heart ached. She saw John's features in them, Lucas's smile, Sophie's determination, Tommy's curiosity, and it made her love them even more. But it also brought unbearable pain. They were all that was left of John, and she needed to protect them, but how could she do that when she could barely stand? Years passed, but the pain never diminished. Emma learned to live with it, to hide it behind a mask of normality. She devoted herself to her children with a desperate intensity, trying to fill the void left by John's death. But the truth was, inside she was still shattered. Every laugh, every achievement of the children was a reminder of what John had missed, of what she had lost. And that was something she could never overcome. That November morning, when Emma looked out the window and saw the first snowflakes falling, she felt a sharp pang of pain. It was the 5th anniversary of John's death. 5 years since her life had been destroyed. She hugged herself, trying to ward off the cold, but the ice in her heart was relentless. As she watched the snow cover the world outside, she knew that no matter how hard she tried, she could never escape the pain she carried. When Emma came down the stairs that November morning, she found the house silent and cold. The first snowflakes had already begun to cover the yard, a white blanket that reflected the emptiness inside her. The house was decorated with the Christmas decorations her children insisted on putting up, but for Emma, the bright lights and colorful wreaths seemed a cruel irony, contrasting with the darkness she felt inside. She walked slowly to the kitchen, where the coffee maker was lazily bubbling. Every step felt like it weighed a ton. As she waited for the coffee to brew, her eyes landed on a framed photograph on the wall, an image of a happier time, when John was alive and her family was whole. She felt a pang in her chest, as if someone were squeezing her heart tightly. The children were still asleep, and Emma took advantage of the rare moment of silence to try to organize her thoughts. Each day was a struggle. a constant battle to maintain the facade of normalcy. Her children needed her, but she felt so exhausted, so empty. Grief was a constant presence, a shadow that followed her everywhere, and there was no escaping it. She picked up her coffee mug and sat at the kitchen table, looking out at the snow-covered world. Memories of John flooded her mind, his laughter, the way he hugged her when she was sad, the promises they made to each other. Everything seemed so distant now, as if it belonged to another life. Tears began to roll silently down her face, and she didn't try to stop them. Crying alone was the only way to release some of the pain she carried. Suddenly, a noise from upstairs pulled her out of her thoughts. Sophie was awake. Emma quickly wiped away her tears and forced a smile as her daughter came down the stairs. Sophie had sleep-swollen eyes, but when she saw her mother, she ran to hug her. "Mommy, why are you crying?" the girl asked, her voice full of concern. Emma held Sophie's small hand and tried to smile. "I'm fine, sweetie. I was just thinking about Daddy." Sophie nodded, her eyes full of premature wisdom. "I miss him every day. Do you think he can see us from heaven?" Emma's heart ached even more. How could she explain to her daughter that sometimes the pain was so great she could barely breathe? She pulled Sophie closer and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart. He's always watching over us." As she hugged her daughter, Emma felt the guilt flood her. She wanted to be strong for her children. She wanted to be the pillar they needed, but how could she be when she could barely keep herself together? The rest of the morning was a blur of household chores and caring for the children. Lucas and Tommy woke up shortly after Sophie, and the daily routine began: preparing breakfast, helping with homework, trying to keep the house in order. Emma did everything automatically, a robotic mother, but inside she felt on the verge of collapse. When the afternoon came, Emma decided to take the children for a walk in the park. The fresh snow air and their laughter as they played in the ice were a small relief for her heavy heart. She watched Lucas help Sophie and Tommy build a snowman, their faces lit up with pure, innocent joy. It was in these moments that Emma felt a glimmer of hope, a small spark of happiness. But these moments were fleeting, and the darkness quickly returned. Back home, while the children warmed up with hot chocolate, Emma went to John's room. She hadn't entered it for months, but something drew her in that direction. Opening the door was like being hit by a tsunami of emotions. His scent was still in the air, his clothes still hanging in the closet, the book he was reading on the bedside table. Everything was exactly as he had left it. Emma approached the bed and sat down, picking up the book. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, each word a reminder of a time that would never return. She lay down on the bed and hugged John's pillow, feeling the tears return. "John, why did you have to go? Why did you leave us?" she whispered, the pain in her voice echoing through the empty room. She cried until she had no more tears, her soul screaming in deafening silence. Hours later, Emma got up, more exhausted than ever. She knew she couldn't go on like this. She knew she needed to find a way to move forward. But how? How could she continue when everything inside her was broken? As she closed the door to John's room, Emma made a promise to herself. She would find a way to live again, not just survive. For her children, for John, and for herself. Emma closed John's bedroom door, feeling an overwhelming weight on her shoulders. She walked down the stairs with heavy steps, knowing she needed to find strength for her children, even though everything inside her was in pieces. In the living room, Lucas was helping Sophie organize the toys, while Tommy, with his bright eyes, was drawing at the kitchen table. "Come on, kids. It's dinner time," Emma said, trying to inject some energy into her voice. They gathered in the kitchen where Emma served macaroni and cheese, a simple dish that always brought a smile to their faces. During dinner, Emma watched each of them, feeling a pang in her heart as she saw the hidden pain in Lucas and Sophie's eyes. Tommy, still so innocent, seemed oblivious to the weight his mother carried. "Mom, do you think Dad is proud of us?" Lucas asked, breaking the silence. His blue eyes, so like John's, shone with a mix of hope and sadness. Emma swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "Of course he is, my love. He's very proud of all three of you. And so am I." After dinner, as the children prepared for bed, Emma sat on the living room couch, hugging a pillow. She stared at the unlit fireplace, feeling John's absence as a constant shadow. She needed to be strong, but how could she when the pain was so overwhelming? Lucas approached, holding his favorite book. "Mom, can you read to us tonight?" Emma looked at the book in her son's hands, remembering how John used to read to them every night. She smiled sadly and nodded. "Of course, dear. Let's go to the bedroom." As she read the story, Emma noticed the peaceful expression on Tommy's face, the attentive gaze of Sophie, and Lucas's slight smile. These moments were precious, but also painful, as each page read was a reminder of what they had lost. After the children fell asleep, Emma stayed by their bedsides for a while, watching them in silence. She wanted to protect her children from all the pain in the world, but she knew she couldn't. The only thing she could do was be there for them, love them unconditionally, and try to build a life that made them feel safe and loved. Emma went back to the living room and picked up the phone. There was a number she had been avoiding calling, but she knew she needed help. She dialed her mother's number, feeling her heart race as she waited for her to answer. "Emma, dear, how are you?" Her mother's voice was soft and concerned. "Mom, I don't know how to go on. I need help," Emma admitted, her voice trembling. "I'll be there tomorrow morning," her mother replied without hesitation. "We'll get through this together, dear. I promise." Emma hung up the phone and felt a small wave of relief. Knowing her mother would come gave her a bit of hope. She needed someone to help her carry the burden, someone who understood her pain and could guide her through the darkest moments. The next morning, the doorbell rang and Emma rushed to answer it. Her mother, a serene-looking woman with eyes full of understanding, was there. Emma fell into her arms, crying like a child. "I don't know what to do, Mom. Everything is falling apart," she sobbed. "Shoo, dear. I'm here now," her mother said, stroking her hair. "We'll face this together. You're not alone." With her mother's arrival, Emma felt a small light of hope amid the darkness. Her presence brought a sense of security, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The following days were filled with long, comforting conversations, where Emma could vent without fear of judgment. Her mother took care of the children, prepared warm meals, and enveloped everyone with a warmth Emma had forgotten was good to feel. It was one of those nights, while they were drinking tea in the kitchen, that her mother suggested something that would change everything. "Emma, I was thinking, how about a trip with the kids? A change of scenery might be good for all of you." Emma hesitated. The idea of leaving the house facing the outside world seemed scary, but at the same time, she knew she needed something to break the cycle of pain and stagnation. Maybe you're right, Mom. We can try," Emma replied, her voice full of uncertainty but also a thread of hope. So, a week later, Emma and the children found themselves on the road, heading to the California coast. The trip, which was supposed to be an escape, a necessary breath, began with a mix of nervousness and expectation. Lucas was excited, Sophie observed everything with silent curiosity, and Tommy kept asking if they would see the sea soon. When they arrived in the small coastal town, they were greeted by a salty breeze and the breathtaking view of the ocean. The rental house where they would stay was cozy, and Emma felt a rare moment of tranquility seeing her children running to explore the place. The next morning, they decided to go to the beach. The children ran to the sea, laughing and screaming, while Emma watched from a safe distance. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to absorb the peace of the scenery when she heard Tommy's voice shouting, "Mom, look! There's someone there!" Emma opened her eyes and saw her son pointing to a figure in the distance. Her heart began to beat faster, and she felt a chill down her spine. Focusing her vision, her eyes widened in shock and disbelief. It was John, alive, accompanied by a woman and a child. Emma's world began to spin. Every step she took towards them seemed like an eternity. Her children, not understanding the gravity of the situation, followed her, curious and confused. When she finally got close, John saw her. His eyes widened, full of a mix of surprise and something Emma couldn't identify. "John? How can you be alive?" Emma's voice was trembling, full of disbelief and pain. The woman beside John, Rebecca, held the child's hand and looked at Emma with confusion and concern. John opened his mouth to speak, but seemed unable to find the words. "Emma, I can explain," he began, but was interrupted by Emma's sob. "Explain? You've been alive all this time and never tried to find me? Letting us believe you were dead." Tears were freely streaming down Emma's face, the pain in her voice evident. John took a step forward, trying to hold Emma's hands, but she pulled back. Confusion and betrayal were bubbling inside her, and she couldn't comprehend what was happening. Rebecca, trying to understand the situation, intervened gently. "John, what's going on? Who is she?" Emma looked at Rebecca and the child, who must have been about 4 years old. The reality of the situation began to unfold in her mind, and she felt the ground open beneath her feet. "John, please say something," Emma whispered, her voice broken. John took a deep breath, his eyes filled with tears. "Emma, I lost my memory after the accident. I've only recently started to recover my memories. I didn't know how to come back." Emma felt her world shatter again. The pain of losing John now mixed with the pain of seeing him build a new life without her. Everything inside her screamed in agony and despair. "Sophie, Lucas, Tommy, let's go," Emma said with a trembling voice, pulling her children away from that impossible scene. Emma couldn't find the words as she walked back to the rental house with her children. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was muffled by the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Sophie, with her attentive gaze, held her mother's hand and asked in a fragile voice, "Mommy, was that Daddy?" Emma stopped and looked at her daughter, her eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly, unable to form a complete answer. Lucas frowned, confused and angry. "But he's dead. How can he be here?" Lucas's voice was full of impotent anger. Emma knelt to be at eye level with her children, trying to find strength. "I don't know, my love. I really don't know." When they reached the house, Emma felt the weight of the entire day fall on her shoulders. She could no longer hide her tears and collapsed on the couch. Her mother, who was in the kitchen, rushed to the living room when she saw her daughter's state. "Emma, what happened?" she asked, worried. Emma told everything, every word coming out with difficulty. The expression of shock on her mother's face reflected exactly how Emma felt inside. The children sat around, waiting for answers that Emma couldn't give. That night, Emma lay in bed, unable to sleep, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every beat of her heart seemed to echo John's name. How could he do this to her? How could he start a new life while she was trapped in an endless cycle of pain? The next day, while having breakfast, the doorbell rang. Emma froze for a moment, fearing who might be on the other side of the door. With hesitant steps, she went to answer. There was John, his face marked by guilt and regret. "Emma, please, we need to talk," he said, his voice soft but urgent. Emma wanted to slam the door in his face, but she knew she needed answers. She nodded and let him in, guiding him to the living room. The children watched from a distance, not knowing what to do or say. "I don't know where to start," John began, rubbing his hands nervously. "Rebecca was the one who found me after the accident. I was badly injured and had no memory. She took care of me, and when I started to regain fragments of my past, we were already together. I felt trapped between two lives, Emma. I tried to move on, but you were always on my mind." Emma felt a growing rage inside her. "So you just moved on? Do you have any idea what we've been through, John? How much we've suffered?" John looked at her, the pain evident in his eyes. "I know there are no excuses for what I did. I should have looked for you, but I was afraid. Afraid it was too late. Afraid you wouldn't want me anymore." His words pierced Emma, bringing to the surface all the pain and anger she had tried to suppress. "You abandoned us, John. I buried you. I told our children you would never come back. And now you appear, expecting everything to go back to normal." John lowered his head, his hands trembling. "I don't expect you to forgive me easily. I know I need to regain your trust, but I'm willing to try. Please, Emma, let me do it. Let me be part of our children's lives again." Emma felt the tears rolling down her face. "And what about Rebecca? And the child? What happens to them?" Hearing this, Emma felt an even greater weight on her heart. So you have two families now. And you expect me to accept that? I don't know what to expect, Emma. I only know that I want to be honest with you from now on. I want to be present for Lucas, Sophie, and Tommy, and find a way to balance that with my other family. Emma looked at John, her heart torn between the love she still felt and the betrayal that consumed her. I need time, John. I need to understand what all this means for me and our children. John nodded, his eyes full of tears. I'll be waiting, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust. Emma left the cafe, feeling more lost than ever. The encounter left her with more questions than answers. She walked through the streets of the small town, trying to find some sense amid the chaos. When she got home, her mother was waiting with a cup of hot tea and a worried look. How was it, dear? Emma sat next to her, holding the cup with trembling hands. He wants a chance to fix things, but he has another family now. I don't know how to deal with this. Her mother stroked her hair, offering silent comfort. You don't need to make any decisions now. Give yourself the time you need. Your feelings are valid, and you have the right to feel everything you're feeling. The days following the meeting with John were a whirlwind of emotions for Emma. Every glance in the mirror reflected a woman she could barely recognize. The children were confused and needed explanations, but Emma didn't have the answers they were looking for. That afternoon, while the children played in the backyard, Emma received a message from John. He wanted to talk again, this time without rushing, without fear of interruption. Emma hesitated, but knew she had to face this situation. They arranged to meet at a cafe in town. Emma entered the cafe, her heart pounding. John was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, nervously looking out the window. When he saw her, he stood up, his face lit up with a trembling smile. Emma, he began, but she raised her hand to interrupt him. Let's get straight to the point, John. I need to understand. I need to understand everything. Her voice was firm, but her eyes were full of pain. John nodded, taking a deep breath. Rebecca was the one who found me after the accident. I was seriously injured and had no memory. She took care of me, and when I started to recover fragments of my past, we were already together. I felt trapped between two lives, Emma. I tried to move on, but you were always on my mind. Emma felt a growing rage inside her. So you just moved on? Do you have any idea what we went through, John? How much we suffered? John looked at her, the pain evident in his eyes. I know there are no excuses for what I did. I should have looked for you, but I was afraid. Afraid that it was too late. Afraid that you wouldn't want me anymore. His words pierced Emma, bringing to the surface all the pain and anger she had tried to suppress. You abandoned us, John. I buried you. I told our children you would never come back. And now you show up, expecting everything to go back to normal. John lowered his head, his hands trembling. I don't expect you to forgive me easily. I know I need to regain your trust, but I'm willing to try. Please, Emma, let me do this. Let me be part of our children's lives again. Emma felt the tears streaming down her face. And what about Rebecca? And the child? What happens to them? Rebecca knows I need to resolve my past. She understands, but it's difficult for all of us. The child, he's my son too, Emma. I can't just abandon them. Hearing this, Emma felt an even greater weight on her heart. So you have two families now. And you expect me to accept that? I don't know what to expect, Emma. I only know that I want to be honest with you from now on. I want to be present for Lucas, Sophie, and Tommy, and find a way to balance that with my other family. Emma looked at John, her heart torn between the love she still felt and the betrayal that consumed her. I need time, John. I need to understand what all this means for me and our children. John nodded, his eyes full of tears. I'll be waiting, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust. Emma left the cafe, feeling more lost than ever. The meeting left her with more questions than answers. She walked through the streets of the small town, trying to find some sense amid the chaos. When she got home, her mother was waiting with a cup of hot tea and a look of concern. How was it, dear? Emma sat next to her, holding the cup with trembling hands. He wants a chance to fix things, but he has another family now. I don't know how to deal with that. Her mother stroked her hair, offering silent comfort. You don't need to make any decisions now. Give yourself the time you need. Your feelings are valid, and you have the right to feel everything you're feeling. In the days that followed, Emma tried to focus on her children, finding strength in the love she felt for them. But John's presence in her thoughts was constant, a shadow she couldn't shake. The children, sensing the tension in the air, became quieter and more observant. Lucas, in particular, seemed to be struggling with his own emotions, while Sophie and Tommy clung to Emma as if they feared she would disappear too. One night, as she was putting the children to bed, Lucas turned to her with eyes full of unspoken questions. "Mom, is Dad coming back home?" he asked, his voice trembling. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. "I don't know, my love. We're trying to understand everything. But I want you to know that I'm here for you, always." Lucas nodded, but Emma could see the confusion and pain in his eyes. She knew she needed answers not just for herself, but for her children. The next morning, she decided it was time to confront John again, this time seeking the whole truth. They met in a park, where they could talk without interruptions. John was waiting, nervous, looking around. When Emma arrived, he stood up, his face lit up with a trembling smile. "Emma," he began, but she raised her hand to stop him. "Let's get straight to the point, John. I need to understand. I need to understand everything." Her voice was firm, but her eyes were full of pain. John nodded, taking a deep breath. "Rebecca was the one who found me after the accident. I was severely injured and without memory. She took care of me, and when I began to recover fragments of my past, we were already together. I felt trapped between two lives, Emma. I tried to move on, but you were always in my mind." Emma felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, compassion. "And why didn't you ever look for us? Why didn't you ever try to come back to us?" "I was afraid, Emma. Afraid it was too late, afraid you had moved on. And when I started to regain my memories, the life I had with Rebecca became more complicated. She was pregnant, and I felt trapped between two lives." Emma looked at John, tears rolling freely down her face. "You have any idea what we went through? What I went through thinking you were dead. And now you expect everything to go back to normal." John held Emma's hands, his eyes begging for understanding. "I don't expect everything to go back to normal. I know I made mistakes, that I failed you and our children. But I want a chance to fix things, to be the father they deserve." Emma withdrew her hands from John's, feeling torn. "I don't know if I can forgive you, John. The pain we felt is too deep." John nodded, respecting Emma's pain. "I understand. But please let me try. I want to be present for our children, to help them understand and heal." The two sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of the conversation. Emma knew she needed time to process everything, but she also knew her children deserved the truth. Back at the rental house, Emma gathered the children in the living room. Lucas, Sophie, and Tommy sat around her, their eyes full of expectation and fear. Emma took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Kids, I know all this is very confusing. Daddy is alive, and he wants to be part of our lives again. But we need time to understand all this and to decide what's best for all of us." Lucas frowned, trying to process his mother's words. "But Mom, why did he leave us?" Emma felt a lump in her throat, fighting not to cry. "He didn't leave us on purpose, Lucas. He was lost and afraid just like us. But now he wants to try to fix things." Sophie hugged Emma, her small hands squeezing tightly. "I miss him, Mommy. I want him to come back." Tommy, still so young, looked at his mother with eyes full of hope. "Is Daddy coming back home?" Emma kissed Tommy's forehead, feeling the weight of his words. "We'll find that out together, dear. We'll take it one step at a time." The days turned into weeks, and Emma tried, moment by moment, to deal with the new reality life had imposed on her. John was back, but his presence brought a storm of emotions. He alternated between staying with Rebecca and his new family, and visiting Emma and the children, trying to rebuild the bonds he had broken. Emma watched everything with a divided heart. Every time John was with their children, she saw the joy in their eyes, but also felt the deep pain of betrayal. Emma's nights were lonely, filled with thoughts of the past and doubts about the future. One afternoon, while Emma was organizing the house, she found a box of memories in the closet. Old photos, letters, and small objects that she and John had collected over the years. As she sifted through the box, she found a letter she had never seen before. It was from Rebecca. With trembling hands, Emma opened the letter and began to read. Rebecca's words were filled with emotion, talking about the early days after finding John, about fear and hope, and about the life they built together. But what shocked Emma the most were the details about how John had regained his memory much earlier than he admitted. Rebecca mentioned moments when John spoke about his old family, about Emma and the children, but never took action to find them. Emma felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. He knew all this time and still chose to stay away. The pain of betrayal was overwhelming, like a knife being repeatedly stabbed into her heart. She collapsed on the couch, the letter still in her hands, tears falling uncontrollably down her face. That night, when John arrived to visit the children, Emma couldn't hide her anger. "We need to talk," she said, her voice cold and firm. John looked at her concerned. "Of course, Emma. What happened?" She threw the letter on the table. "You knew, John. You knew and still chose to abandon us. How could you do this?" John picked up the letter, reading Rebecca's words, his face contorting with pain and guilt. "Emma, I was afraid. I was afraid of how you would react, afraid it was too late." Emma shook her head, incredulous. "Afraid? Is that all you have to say? While I was here fighting every day, you were living a new life, knowing we were alive, that we needed you." John tried to approach, but Emma stepped back. "Please, Emma. I know I made a mistake, I know I hurt you. But I'm here now trying to fix things." "Fix things?" Emma shouted, her voice breaking. "You destroyed our trust, our family. I don't know if this can be fixed." The children, who were upstairs, came down the stairs scared by the shouting. Lucas looked at his father, confused and hurt. "Dad, what's going on?" Emma took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "Kids, go to your room. Your dad and I need to sort some things out." Lucas, Sophie, and Tommy obeyed, but the pain and confusion were evident on their faces. Emma turned to John, the anger still burning inside her. "You need to leave, John. I need time to think." John nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything." Emma stood there, watching as John walked out the door, feeling more alone than ever. She sat on the living room floor, hugging herself, trying to find some comfort. The pain of betrayal was unbearable, and she didn't know how to move forward. The next morning, Emma decided she needed help. She called her best friend, Sarah, someone who had always been by her side, even in the hardest times. When Sarah arrived, she found Emma in the kitchen, holding a rapidly cooling cup of tea. "Emma, dear, what happened?" Sarah asked, worried. Emma told her everything, from the discovery of the letter to the argument with John. Sarah listened attentively, holding Emma's hand, offering comfort and support. "You don't have to go through this alone, Emma. I'm here for you always," Sarah said, her voice soft and comforting. Emma looked at her friend, feeling a small spark of hope. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I would do without you." The days after discovering the letter were a blur of pain and confusion for Emma. She moved around the house like a ghost, trying to be strong for her children while her heart was in pieces. Sarah remained by her side, offering a shoulder to cry on and helping with the children. But there was a deep sadness in Emma's eyes that no one could reach. One of those nights, after putting the children to bed, Emma sat in the dark living room, hugging her own legs, feeling more lost than ever. John's words echoed in her mind, and every memory of his betrayal was a stab to her heart. She needed to understand, she needed to find some form of peace, but she didn't know where to start. Suddenly, she heard a knock on the door. Her heart raced. With hesitant steps, she went to the door and opened it. It was John with red and tired eyes. "Emma, I know this isn't the best time, but I needed to talk to you." he said, his voice broken by pain. Emma wanted to send him away, wanted to scream, but something in his expression made her stop. She nodded slowly and let him in. They sat at the kitchen table, where so many happy memories had been made, now a stage of pain and betrayal. Emma, I've thought a lot about what you said. I know I made a mistake, and I know I may never convince you to forgive me. But I'm here because I want to be honest, more honest than I've been before. John began, his voice low and full of regret. Emma looked at him, the tears already starting to fall. Honest, John? Do you think that will erase the pain I feel? That it will fix everything? No, John replied, shaking his head. But maybe it's a start. I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, never stopped thinking about you and the kids. Every day away was hell, but I was afraid to face what I had done. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the anguish in his words. So you chose the easier way out, ran away from the problem and left us here destroyed. Yes, John admitted, his voice full of guilt. And it was the biggest cowardice of my life. But I'm here now, Emma. I want to fix this, I want to be here for you and our children. She looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, but also knowing that the scars he left were deep. And Rebecca? And your other son? John sighed, running his hands through his hair. Rebecca understands that I need to do this. She knows I need to regain your trust, and she's willing to support me. As for my son, he deserves the truth too. I don't want to abandon anyone, Emma. But you are my family, my first family, and I need to fix what I destroyed. John's words pierced Emma's heart, bringing a new wave of tears. She wanted to believe, she wanted to find a way to heal, but the pain was so intense, so present. I don't know if I can, John. I don't know if I can trust you again. John approached but stopped, respecting her space. I know, and I'll give you the time you need. I just want you to know that I'm here, that I won't run away again. Emma stood up, feeling suffocated by the intensity of the moment. I need air, she said, stepping into the backyard. John followed at a safe distance, respecting her space. In the backyard, under the starry sky, Emma took a deep breath, trying to find some clarity. The tears kept falling, and she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. It was Sarah, who had been watching from afar. You are not alone, Emma, Sarah said, her voice calm and comforting. We are all here for you. Emma turned to Sarah, hugging her tightly, feeling grateful for her friend. John watched from a distance, respecting the moment, but desperately wishing he could be by Emma's side, helping her heal. When Emma finally calmed down, she turned to John. This will take time, a lot of time, and I don't know what the future holds, but for our children I'll try. I'll try to understand and forgive. John nodded, tears in his eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. Thank you, Emma. I promise I won't disappoint you again. In the days that followed, Emma tried to reconcile her emotions while watching John make a sincere effort to reconnect with the children. There were moments of tenderness, when she saw Lucas get excited talking about school with his father, or Sophie snuggling in John's lap while he read a story. Tommy, still so small and full of hope, clung to every moment with his father as if he feared he would disappear again. Emma knew she needed to find a way to deal with her own feelings, to confront the pain John's betrayal had caused. It was then that Rebecca surprisingly reached out to her. Emma received a message from Rebecca, asking to meet at a local cafe. Hesitant, but feeling an intense curiosity, she agreed. When she arrived, she saw Rebecca sitting at a table, looking nervous but determined. Emma approached, her heart racing. Emma, thank you for coming, Rebecca began, her voice trembling. I know this situation is difficult for all of us, but I wanted to talk to you, woman to woman. Emma nodded, sitting down across from her. Rebecca, I don't know what you expect from this conversation, but I'm here to listen. Rebecca took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I want you to know that I never wanted to cause pain to you or your children. When I found John, he was lost, without memory. We fell in love, and when he started to remember, we were already deeply involved. It was a complicated situation for all of us. Emma felt a mix of emotions. And when he remembered, you knew he had another family. Why did you never try to contact us?" Rebecca lowered her head, visibly emotional. "John was afraid and so was I. I was afraid of losing the life we had built. But I know it was selfish and I'm sorry for that. When John decided he needed to come back to you, I supported him, even knowing it could mean the end of what we had." Emma observed Rebecca, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "I don't know if I can forgive you. The pain we felt is deep, and my children are confused and hurt." Rebecca nodded, tears beginning to fall. "I understand, but I'm here to support John and you if you allow it. I want our children to know each other, to find a way to coexist. I know it won't be easy, but I believe it's possible." Emma felt a pang in her heart. Rebecca's proposal was unexpected, but there was a sincerity that touched her. "I don't know how this can work, Rebecca, but I'm willing to try for our children." Rebecca smiled, relieved. "Thank you, Emma. Let's make this work together." When Emma returned home, she felt a new sense of hope. She knew the journey would be long and full of challenges, but there was a new determination in her heart. The next day, she told John about the conversation with Rebecca, and he was visibly moved. "Emma, thank you for being willing to try. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll do everything to regain your trust," John said, holding Emma's hands carefully. Over time, Emma and Rebecca began to work together to create an environment where their children could get to know each other and learn to accept themselves as an extended family. There were moments of tension, but also moments of genuine connection and growth. One afternoon, while everyone was gathered at the park, Lucas, Sophie, and Tommy played with their half-brother, laughing and running together. Emma and Rebecca watched from a distance, sharing a silent smile. John approached Emma, gently touching her shoulder. "Look what we've accomplished, Emma. Our children are happy," he said, his voice full of emotion. Emma looked at him, feeling a mix of relief and love. "Yes, John, we did it." The following months brought a fragile sense of normality to Emma's life. John continued to regain the children's trust, and Rebecca proved to be an unexpected ally. Despite the difficulties, there were moments of genuine joy, shared laughter, and small steps toward healing. However, the tranquility was only a thin surface, hiding the turbulent waters below. One night, as Emma was in the kitchen preparing dinner, she received an unexpected call. It was an unknown number, but something inside her made her answer. "Hello," said Emma, trying to keep her voice steady. "Emma, it's Rebecca. We need to talk. It's urgent." The tone of Rebecca's voice made Emma's heart race. They met at a cafe that same night. When Emma arrived, Rebecca looked nervous, her hands trembling slightly as she held a cup of tea. "Rebecca, what happened?" Emma asked, worried. Rebecca took a deep breath, struggling to find the words. "Emma, there's something you need to know. Something I recently discovered." Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. "What is it, Rebecca? Please tell me." Rebecca looked at Emma, her eyes filled with tears. "John, he wasn't completely honest with us. I discovered he was involved in shady business before the accident. And recently someone started blackmailing us, threatening to expose everything if we don't pay." Emma felt her world crumble again. "You're saying John is involved in something illegal? That he lied to us again?" Rebecca nodded, tears falling. "I didn't want to believe it, but the documents I found leave no doubt. I confronted John, and he admitted it. He said he did everything to protect us, but now everything is coming back to haunt him." The anger and pain inside Emma exploded. "He betrayed us again. And this time he put us all in danger." Rebecca held Emma's hand, her eyes pleading for understanding. "Emma, I know this is too much to process, but we need to find a way to deal with this, to protect our families." Emma felt torn between anger and the need to protect her children. "What are we going to do, Rebecca? How can we face this?" Rebecca took a deep breath, trying to appear stronger than she felt. "First, we need to ensure the children's safety. And then we need to confront John and demand he resolve this. We can't allow him to keep lying and putting everyone at risk." When Emma returned home that night, she felt more lost than ever. The children were already asleep, and the house was silent, but the storm inside her was far from calming down. She entered John's room and found him sitting on the bed, his head in his hands. "John, we need to talk," said Emma, her voice trembling with emotion. John looked at her, his eyes full of guilt and regret. "Emma, I can explain." "No, John. No more excuses. Rebecca told me everything. How could you lie to us again? How could you put our lives in danger?" John stood up, trying to approach Emma. "I did it to protect you. I thought I could resolve everything without involving you." Emma stepped back, feeling betrayed once again. "Protect us? You only put us in more danger. I don't know if I can continue living with these lies, John." John fell to his knees in front of Emma, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Emma, forgive me. I'll do anything to fix this. I love you. I love our children. I don't want to lose you." The pain and confusion in Emma were overwhelming. She knew she needed to make a difficult decision, but she also knew she couldn't continue living in a web of lies. "John, I need time. I need to protect my children, and you need to resolve this once and for all." In the days that followed, Emma and Rebecca worked together to ensure their family's safety. They hired private security, changed their routines, and stayed constantly alert. John promised to resolve the situation, but the trust was broken. The tension in Emma's house was palpable. The constant threat loomed over everyone, and the revealed secrets had left deep scars. Despite all the security measures Emma and Rebecca took, the feeling of vulnerability was inescapable. The children, sensing the change in atmosphere, began to show signs of stress and fear. One night, Emma was putting Sophie to bed when the girls started to cry, her small body trembling with fear. "Mommy, I'm scared," Sophie whispered, clinging to Emma's arm. "I don't want anything bad to happen to us." Emma felt her heart break. She stroked Sophie's hair, trying to convey the security she herself didn't feel. "I know, sweetie, but I'm here and I won't let anything bad happen to you, Lucas or Tommy. I promise." Sophie sobbed, her tears soaking the pillow. "And Daddy? Is he going away again?" Emma closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "No, my love. Daddy is trying to resolve everything. He wants to stay here with us." As Sophie finally fell asleep, Emma left the room feeling powerless. She found Lucas sitting in the hallway, his legs crossed and his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked up when he saw his mother, and Emma saw the anger and pain in her son's eyes. "Lucas, what are you doing awake?" Emma asked softly. Lucas shook his head, his expression hardening. "I heard what you said to Sophie, but I don't believe Daddy will fix everything. He only makes things worse." Emma sat next to him, feeling the barrier between them. "Lucas, I know it's hard to believe, but your father is trying. He made mistakes, many mistakes, but he's trying to fix them." Lucas looked at her, his anger overflowing. "He lied to us, Mom. He lied to you. How can you believe him again?" Emma felt a tear roll down her face. "I don't know, Lucas. I really don't know. But we have to try for ourselves, for our family." Lucas stood up, his expression full of hurt. "I just want everything to go back to normal. I want the pain to stop." Emma pulled him into a hug, feeling her son's pain echoing in her own heart. "I know, my love. I know. And I promise we'll find a way to get through this. Together." In the days that followed, the tensions increased. Tommy, always so cheerful, started having nightmares and waking up screaming in the middle of the night. Emma, exhausted and worried, tried to comfort him, but felt increasingly powerless. One late afternoon, while Emma was in the kitchen preparing dinner, she heard an argument upstairs. She ran up and found Lucas and John shouting at each other. "You can't just show up and think everything is okay," Lucas shouted, his fists clenched. John, trying to stay calm, replied, "I know I made mistakes, Lucas, but I'm here to fix things. I love you and want to be a present father." "Love isn't enough," Lucas retorted, tears streaming down his face. "You left us, and now we're all scared because of you." Emma intervened, separating the two. "Enough. This isn't helping. John looked at Emma, his eyes full of pain. "Emma, I know, John," she said, interrupting him. "But we need to resolve this in a way that doesn't destroy our family even more." John nodded, stepping back to give space. Lucas, still with tears in his eyes, ran to his room, slamming the door behind him. That night, Emma sat alone in the living room, feeling the weight of everything on her shoulders. The crisis her children were facing was a reflection of the emotional storm they were all living. She knew she needed to find a way to restore trust and security in her home. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Sarah, her best friend. "Emma, how are you?" Sarah asked, her voice full of concern. Emma sighed, trying to hold back the tears. "Everything is falling apart, Sarah. I don't know how to fix this." "You are one of the strongest women I know, Emma," Sarah said firmly. "You'll find a way, and I'll be here to help." Emma smiled, feeling a bit of hope ignite in her heart. "Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot to me." The days passed slowly, each one filled with uncertainties and tensions. Emma was exhausted, emotionally and physically, trying to balance her children's needs with her own internal struggles. John, for his part, was desperately trying to prove his regret, but the previous lies and secrets continued to haunt the family. One night, while Emma was in the kitchen preparing dinner, she heard hurried footsteps at the front door. It was Lucas running into the house, his face pale and his eyes wide. "Mom, there's someone outside." "A strange man," he said, his voice full of fear. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the threats Rebecca had mentioned, the possibility of someone blackmailing John. She ran to the door and cautiously looked out the window. She saw a shadowy figure standing across the street, watching the house. She quickly locked the door and closed all the curtains, trying not to alarm the children more than they already were. Her heart was beating uncontrollably, and she grabbed the phone, dialing John's number. "John, there's someone outside the house." Lucas saw a strange man. "What's going on?" Emma's voice trembled with fear and anger. John, on the other end of the line, sounded alarmed. "Emma, I'm on my way. Stay inside and don't let anyone in. I'll resolve this." Emma hung up the phone and tried to stay calm. She hugged her children, assuring them everything would be okay, although she wasn't sure of that. The wait seemed endless, and every sound heightened her anxiety. When John finally arrived, he entered the house with a determined expression. "Emma, I'll handle this. Please stay here with the children." Emma followed him to the door, holding his hand. "John, be careful." He nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Emma stayed by the window, watching as John confronted the mysterious figure. The words were inaudible, but the gestures and expressions showed the conversation was intense. After a few minutes that seemed like hours, the stranger walked away, and John came back inside. "Who was it?" Emma asked, her voice full of tension. John took a deep breath, his face reflecting the gravity of the situation. "It was someone involved in the businesses I mentioned. They want money to keep quiet. But I promise, Emma, I'll resolve this. I won't let anything happen to you." Emma felt a mix of anger and despair. "You put our family in danger, John. How can I trust that you'll resolve this?" John knelt before her, his eyes pleading. "Emma, I know I made mistakes, but I'll do everything in my power to protect our family. Please believe me." Before Emma could respond, Lucas entered the room, his face full of determination. "Mom, Dad, we need help. We can't face this alone." Emma looked at her son, feeling proud of his courage. "You're right, Lucas. Let's seek help." The next day, Emma and John sought a lawyer, explaining the entire situation. The lawyer advised them on the legal steps to take and connected them with the police to ensure the family's safety. Emma also told Sarah and Rebecca about the situation, and both offered unconditional support. One night, while Emma was sitting on the couch with Sarah, Rebecca arrived with a worried expression. "We need to talk about something important," she said, sitting next to Emma. Rebecca explained that there were more details about John's businesses that she had recently discovered. "They might be more involved than we thought. We need to be very careful." Emma felt the weight of yet another revelation. "Rebecca, I don't know how to thank you for your support. I'm so tired of all this." Rebecca held Emma's hand, her eyes full of understanding. "We're in this together, Emma. We'll protect our families no matter the cost." As the nights passed, Emma realized she couldn't continue living in fear. She needed to make a decision that would ensure her children's safety and restore peace to her life. One afternoon, while watching Lucas, Sophie, and Tommy play in the backyard, Emma called John to talk. They sat on the porch, the sun setting on the horizon, painting the sky with soft colors. "John, I loved you so much. I still do. But the lies and secrets almost destroyed our family. I need to make a decision for the sake of the children and for my own well-being," Emma began, her voice calm but firm. John looked at her, the pain evident in his eyes. "Emma, please don't give up on us." She took a deep breath, feeling the tears begin to fall. "I'm not giving up, John. But I need time to heal, to find peace again. And that means we need to separate for a while." John lowered his head, tears falling silently. "I understand, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you and the children are safe and happy." Emma held John's hand, squeezing it tightly. "I know you will. And maybe one day we can find a way to rebuild everything. But for now, I need to focus on our children and myself." John nodded, accepting the decision with a heavy heart. They hugged, feeling the pain of separation but also the hope of a future where truth and safety prevailed. In the days that followed, Emma began to rebuild her life with the support of Sarah and Rebecca. The house was equipped with new security measures, and Emma started looking for a therapist to help her children cope with the trauma. The days turned into weeks, and Emma continued to face each new challenge with renewed determination. The constant presence of Sarah and Rebecca provided vital support, and the security measures implemented helped alleviate the feeling of vulnerability. However, the persistent threats continued to loom, a dark shadow over Emma's newfound peace. One night, while Emma was reading a story to Sophie and Tommy, she heard a firm knock on the door. Her heart raced, and she instinctively put the children to bed, asking them to stay quiet. With careful steps, she went downstairs and peeked out the window. She saw a familiar figure, the lawyer they had hired. Emma opened the door, feeling a mix of relief and worry. "Mr. Daniels, what happened?" The lawyer entered, his expression serious. "Emma, I received important information. We need to talk." They sat in the living room, and the lawyer explained that the threats were intensifying. "We've discovered that the men behind the blackmail are planning something big. We need to act quickly." Emma felt the weight of his words, a sense of urgency and fear growing inside her. "What do we need to do?" The lawyer detailed a plan to confront the blackmailers and resolve the situation once and for all. Emma knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed John. Later that night, while the children slept, Emma called John, explaining the situation. "John, we need to resolve this now. We can't keep living in fear." John, on the other end of the line, felt the gravity of Emma's words. "I'm on my way, Emma. We'll face this together." When John arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. They prepared for the meeting with the blackmailers, arming themselves with the support of the lawyer and the authorities who had been informed of the situation. The meeting was set in a discreet location. Emma and John arrived together, their hearts beating fast. They felt the tension in the air, knowing that moment could change everything. When the blackmailers appeared, Emma saw their faces for the first time, dark and ruthless men, cold and calculating eyes. The leader of the blackmailers stepped forward, a cruel smile on his lips. "So, you finally decided to resolve this? Too late, perhaps." Emma, with a strength she didn't know she possessed, faced the man. "You no longer have control over us. The authorities already know everything. This ends now." There was a moment of unbearable tension. The blackmailers looked around, noticing the presence of hidden authorities. The leader laughed, but there was a touch of desperation in his voice. "You think you can stop us? Do you think this is the end?" It was then that John stepped forward, his voice firm and full of determination. "Yes, it's the end. You won't threaten my family anymore." The authorities sprang into action, detaining the blackmailers. Emma felt a deep relief, as if a gigantic weight had been lifted from her shoulders. When it was all over, she turned to John, her eyes full of tears. "John, we did it," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. John pulled her into a tight embrace. "Yes, we did. And I promise, Emma, we'll never go through this again." The following days were spent recovering and reflecting. Emma knew there was much to rebuild, but she felt a new hope. The constant presence of Sarah and Rebecca continued to be a source of strength, and the children began to show signs of recovery, their smiles slowly returning. One afternoon, while Emma was in the backyard watching the children play, John approached. He held something in his hands, a small wooden box. "Emma, I have something for you," said John, handing her the box. Emma opened the box and found letters. Letters John had written during the time he was away but never had the courage to send. She began to read, tears silently rolling down her face as she felt John's love, guilt, and regret in every word. When she finished reading, she looked at John, feeling a mix of emotions. "John, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to try. For us, for our children." John pulled her into another embrace, and in that moment, Emma felt they were taking the first real step toward healing. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with colors of hope and renewal, Emma looked at her children, at John, and felt a new sense of peace. She knew there would still be challenges, but with the strength of love and the determination of her family, they could face anything. And so, surrounded by the children's laughter and John's comforting embrace, Emma found the courage to start a new chapter, where the pain of the past transformed into strength and the hope of the future shone brighter than ever.